This is WMUC FM College Park. Hello, folks, and thanks for listening today. Welcome back to Tape Deck Time Machine. I'm your host, Ari Rickman, and with me in the studio today is a very special guest. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, folks. My name is Len. I'm Ari Rickman's dad.
Thanks, Dad. And do you want to tell the people what we're going to be focusing on today?
Today we're focusing on the band Jethro Tull. It's the 50th anniversary this year of Jethro Tull. They began recording and touring in 1968.
Yeah, 50 years. Long time.
50 years, long time. And Ian Anderson might be 70 years old. He turned 70 last August, but not only is it his 50th anniversary, but he's still touring. He's still doing about 70 shows in 2018 in at least 12 different countries. He might not be the only person at that age touring, but he's one of them, and he's doing great. And his shows are still lively and a lot of fun.
So today we're going to be focusing on... We're going to do a little biographic stuff on Jethro Tull and its main band leader, Ian Anderson. But like everything, we only really have an hour, and it's impossible to dive into too much nuance and depth with any musician or genre in just 1 hour. So we're going to do sort of scratching the surface a little bit of his biography and the band's biography, and then we're going to focus mostly on the favorites, the, in our opinion, greatest hits.
So I apologize in advance to any of you fellow Tull skulls whose favorite songs, or best memories from Tull might not make it on the show today, but we're going to do our best to give a great representation of Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull.
Yeah, and starting off on the sort of more biographic stuff, Dad, do you want to talk a little bit about where the name Jethro Tull even comes from? It's kind of funny sounding.
Sure. Well, a bunch of the lads were playing together in the late 60s, and the name the John Evans Blues Band, that was the original keyboard player, and they decided to form a band and have a new name, and nobody really knew what to call it. At one point, it might have been called Candy Colored Rain, whatever that means. So one day, they're in the studio, and apparently, as the story goes, a studio crew person yelled out, "Hey, how about the name Jethro Tull?" And everybody looked around and said, "Oh, okay, it's as good as anything, why not?" Now, Jethro Tull, also known as Sir Jethro Tull, was an agricultural inventor in the 17th century in England, who invented apparently a drill where one could drill seeds into the ground one at a time rather than scattershot. So that's how the name came about, just kind of by accident. Somebody threw the name out there, and it stuck.
Yeah, fantastic. And can you talk a little bit about the song that we listened to on the intro and how you first got into the band?
Sure, that was the first song that I ever heard. A friend of mine, when I was 16, said, "Hey, my big sister just got this new album. It's called Aqualung." To which I said, "Huh? What is that?" And I checked it out, and I liked it. And that song, Aqualung, the title track from the album, has been an iconic Jethro Tull riff in rock and roll lore for a good 40 years now. And that was the beginning of the Tull rise to fame. They had been famous in England for a while, but Aqualung started them climbing up the charts and became a worldwide phenomena.
Fantastic. And now we're going to start back on the music, and we're going to start sort of near the beginning. Aqualung was the beginning, especially for you. And we're going to play a song called Serenade to a Cuckoo and introduce sort of what made Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull stick out from the beginning, and examine the root of how flute was very important in Jethro Tull's music from the beginning and where that came from. So now we're going to play Serenade to a Cuckoo. And so we're back, and that was Serenade to a Cuckoo off of one of Ian Anderson's first, or Jethro Tull's first big album.
First album.
Oh, it was the first. Okay, great.
Called This Was.
Which kind of fits with the whole time-traveling theme of the show, but we'll get more into that later. In the meantime, Dad, do you want to talk a little bit about the flute that we're hearing and the influence of a particular musician named Roshan Roland Kirk on Jethro Tull?
Sure. The story goes that Ian said when he was young, the only instrument his family could afford was a flute. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? But that's the instrument that he began playing. And his early influence was Roshan Roland Kirk. And you can hear the influence of the overblowing, the air through the flute, and a little bit of the vocals going through the flute at the same time, which over the years became a signature of Ian Anderson in the studio and in concert.
Yeah, which is, I think, pretty unique, pretty interesting.
And the jazzy blues style that you're hearing on this was keeping with a lot of British musicians at the time of following American blues and jazz. And almost said that wrong, I guess, but American blues and jazz. And Ian was, a young British lad himself. But shortly after that, he began a new path, a new style, keeping, of course, with the flute, and then also picking up acoustic guitar and playing a lot of that, as well as vocals.
And there was another element to his music, too, that came from his Scottish heritage, right?
Right. For a while, the music was also influenced by Scottish folk music and by Baroque classical music. And a little later in the show, there'll be some great examples of the classical connection, if you will, between Ian's music, Jethro Tull's music, and music from hundreds of years ago, people like J.S. Bach.
Right. So now that we've listened to the earlier stuff from Ian and how other people influenced him and he sort of made it his own, we're going to listen to something that was not unique, but very interesting that he did. We're going to listen to a song that spanned an entire album. Now, again, we only have an hour, so we're not going to listen to the whole song, but we're going to play a nice little chunk for you that we think demonstrates a good transition from his instrumental, sort of bluesy stuff into more hard rock and stuff as well.
And this particular song also represents Ian's combination of music, starting off acoustic, and please pay attention to the nice combination of plucking and strumming on the acoustic guitar and the combination of major and minor chords as he plucks and strums. And then the song transitions into a rock and roll.
So this is a selection from Thick as a Brick. Enjoy.
Really don't mind if you sit this one out. My words but a whisper, your deafness a shout. I may make you feel, but I can't make you think. Your sperm's in the gutter, your love's in the sink. So you ride yourself over the fields and you make all your animal deals, and your wise men don't know how it feels to be thick as a brick. And the sandcastle virtues are all swept away.
And yes, that's Ian playing three different instruments at once, vocals, guitar, and flute.
The elastic retreat rings the close of play as the last wave uncovers the newfangled way. But you noose you the one at the heels, and your sometimes rapidly feel, and your wise men don't know how it feels to be thick as a brick. And the love that I feel is so far away. I'm a that dream that I just had today. And you shake your head, you said it's a shame. Spin me back down the years and the days of my youth. Draw the lace and black curtains and shut out the whole truth. Spin me down the long ages, let them sing the song. sun plays on the infantry returning from the sea. The doer and the thinker, no allowance for the other, as the failing light illuminates the mercenary's creed. The bonfire burning, the kettle almost boiling, but the master of the house is far away. The Pharisee is standing, their warm breath clouding in the sharp and frosty morning of the day. And the poet lifts his pen while the soldier sheets his quietly grazing at the grass down by the river, where the swelling mountain water moves onward to the sea. The builder of the castles renews the age-old purpose and contemplates the milking girl who's over.
So that was a selection from Thick as a Brick, Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull's first song that spanned an entire album. It wasn't the only one, though. There was another one. How long after they make the second one?
About a year or so. Should also point out that Thick as a Brick was my first Jethro Tull concert at the Baltimore Arena.
I didn't know that.
Back in the mid-'70s, and after a 45-minute song or so, that included a little skit on stage. So 45-minute opening song, Ian comes on and says, and for our second number, to great applause and laughter. So yes, Ian was so flushed with success and happiness about how Thick as a Brick went and how it was received on the airwaves and in sold-out basketball arenas across the U.S. and elsewhere, that he decided to do another full-length song on an album called A Passion Play. And he worked really hard on A Passion Play, 7 days a week. He sequestered the band in a chalet in Switzerland, and they worked really hard, back in the days when computers weren't as good as they are nowadays in terms of recording and overdubbing and all that good stuff. And he worked really hard, and then he didn't like the final product just before he released it. He trashed it, started over. Not that the band wanted to do that, but they did. They worked hard, they started over. They finally finished it, polished it, released it, and then it got panned. The mass media, the music media, and others just did not like it. Can't tell you why, don't remember why, don't care why. But that really did not sit well with Mr. Anderson. He was not happy that all that hard work and what he thought was a great piece of music, and so did some of us, the rest of us, got panned. He performed it in concert and sold records, of course, but that set up a fairly contentious relationship between Ian Anderson and the mainstream media. And, of course, those were the days before websites, so there was no other way to find out really what was happening or what he was thinking or doing. But there was just bad publicity, and Ian was not in a good mood musically or professionally.
And now, let me ask you a question as a dedicated Tull Skull. What did you think of Passion Play when it came out? And, what do you think of it now?
I liked the Passion Play when it came out. Of course, I was somewhat biased. At the time, and even to this day, many, many years later, decades later, don't like it as much as Thick as a Brick, the piece we were just listening to, but it still has a lot of nice musical elements to it, and it still has, like Thick as a Brick that we're hearing, different patterns and themes and bridges and instrumentality and weaving of instruments and melodies back and forth. So it has all of those things in it, and for some reason it didn't come out to me quite as well as Thick as a Brick. That also features the rare example of Ian playing saxophone, and I believe he didn't really like playing saxophone because he rarely did it before or after.
Well, maybe he got a little traumatized. But that wasn't his only sort of little struggle in that time period, right? Didn't he also attempt to direct a movie?
Right. About a year after A Passion Play, Ian came up with the idea of producing a full-length movie. Now, I should also point out that Ian was one of the early pioneers in using live video on stage. The Passion Play concert began with a ballerina dancing on a huge screen, filmed on a huge screen behind the stage. And as the music began with an electronic heartbeat, the first beat of the song coincided with this ballerina diving through a mirror, and then the song began. So he was into video. He thought he was going to make a full-length movie in conjunction with the album War Child, which came out after A Passion Play. And for reasons that never really got a lot of publicity, then I don't know, that movie project fell apart.
But that wasn't the end of Ian Anderson, obviously, nor Jethro Tull.
Not even close.
And it was... So what year was...
Listen to this flute solo for a second, folks.
So come on, now you're criminals, got to put you straight.
That's right.
Just like I did with my old band 20 years too late.
And if you listen closely, you hear the violin as well.
So, despite the somewhat lean times that he fell on after the panning of Passion Play, he went on to have widespread popularity and critically acclaimed success, right? I mean, how long after this did he win? Well, he won a Grammy, but that was much later.
Okay, well, he's jumping a little ahead there, my anxious young son. After Passion Play, when I mentioned a moment ago, War Child, the movie project that fell apart, that album happened to include one of the few top 40 hits in Ian Anderson's history, the song called Bungle and the Jungle, which we are not playing today, but we did feel important to mention. So yes, he was in a bad mood with the mainstream media and I guess vice versa. But shortly after that, he had a top 40 hit.
But transitioning from what we're not playing but mentioning to what we are playing, we're going to now take a little bit of a break from talking and let several songs play from what you consider the golden age of Ian Anderson, right?
Yep, I think the late 70s, my personal bias, and some of my Tull Skull buddies who may be listening out there, Joe, Dave, Keith, a few others, Steve. Yes, in the late 70s, we felt that this was the best period of Ian Anderson's music career, Jethro Tull. The band had been together for the entire decade, and incidentally, in 1980, he had a new band, mostly. And he was a lot of Scottish influences, a lot of country living influences. He had left London. And so the next series of songs comes from that period, including, was Dunringle next?
Dunringle is next.
Dunringle, which is my wife, Kay, who hopefully is listening. This is her favorite song coming up in a moment.
That's right. Shout out to Mom. So we'll start with Dunringle, and then we will play songs from The Wood, Pied Piper, and One Brown Mouse, and a short tribute to the golden age of Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson.
The late 1970s.
And so we're starting with Dunringle.
The weather's on the change. Ice clouds joining faint discord, and the storm watch joining faint discord, and the storm watch brews a concert of kings as the white sea snaps at the heels of a soft prayer, whispering.
Lit light on a slick pond as I missed the other day. Slip the night from a shade bank, make a mocked card play. We call twilight hours down from a heaven home, high above the highest bidder, for the good Lord's throne. In the wee hours I'll meet you down by the ring-hill, on we'll watch the old gods play by Dunringle, by Dunringle. We'll wait in stone circles until the force comes through. Lines join in faint discords, and the storm watch brews. A concert of kings as the white sea snaps at the heels of a soft prayer, whispered. In the wee hours I'll meet you down by Dunringle, oh, and I'll take you quickly, oh, by Dunringle, by Dunringle, oh, by Dunringle.
Quiet acoustic guitar to rock and roll.
Let me bring you songs from the woods to make you feel much better than you could know. Better than you could dust you down from tip to toe. Dust you down from tip to toe. Show you how the garden grows. Show you how the garden grows. Hold you steady as you go. go. Hold steady as you join the chorus if you can. It'll make of you an honest man. Let me bring you love from the fields, poppies red and roses filled with summer rain, to heal the wound and still the pain that threatens again and again as you drag down every lover's lane. Life's long celebrations here, I'll toast you all in penny cheer. Let me bring you all things refined, galley heights and lute songs served in chilling ale. Greetings, well met fellow, hail. I am the wind to fill your sail, I am the frost to take your nail, a singer of these ageless times, with kitchen prose and gutter rhymes. Let me bring you love from the fields, poppies red and roses filled with summer rain, to heal the wound and still the pain that threatens again and again as you drag down every lover's lane. Life's long celebrations here, I'll toast you all in penny cheer. Songs from the woods make you feel much better. Songs from the woods make you feel much better.
The title track, Songs from the Wood, from the album Songs from the Wood. So my wife texted during that, my wife Kay, saying that that song was popular and reminds her of when we first met. So that's a nice personal touch. I forgot about that part, but I do remember our anniversary, 10988. The next song we're going to play is another example of late 70s rock and roll, but also if you listen closely, you'll be able to hear Ian singing with himself in the studio, of course, multiple vocal tracks on one of my all-time favorite songs. Next, from the album Heavy Horses, called One Brown Mouse.
Enjoy.
Smile, you little smile. Take some tea with me a while. Brush away that black cloud from your shoulder. Twitch your whiskers, feel that you're really real. Another tea time, another day older. Up one breath from your tiny hands. You wish you were a man who every day can turn another page. Behind your glass you sit and look at my ever-open book. One brown mouse sitting in a cage. Do you wonder if I really care for you? Am I just the company you keep? Which one of us exercises on the old treadmill? Who hides his head pretending to sleep? Smile, you little smile. Take some tea with me a while. Brush away that black cloud from your shoulder. Twitch your whiskers, feel that you're really real. Another tea time, another day older. Smile, you little smile. Take some tea with me a while. And every day we'll turn another page. Behind your glass we'll sit and look at our ever-open book. One brown mouse sitting in a cage. One brown mouse sitting in a cage. One brown mouse sitting in a cage.
So the next song comes off of an album that wasn't, unlike the two previous ones we mentioned, that wasn't one song that spanned an entire album, but it was an album that spanned a story of one person. You want to talk about that story, Dad?
Sure. Well, the name of the album is Too Old to Rock and Roll and Too Young to Die. Ian, of course, insisted at the time that it was not autobiographical. It was a story about a guy named Ray, a motorcycle guy, kind of a ruffian in England in the day. And the entire album is different songs about what went on in Ray's life, including a horrific motorcycle crash in the album, in the concept. And the next song we're going to play is a sweet little song with a lot of orchestral elements and just, I think, really pleasant and sweet to listen to. And takes place in the story shortly after Ray's horrible motorcycle crash, called Pied Piper.
Now if you think Ray blew it, there was nothing to it. They patched him up as good as new. You can see him every day riding down the Queen's Highway, handing out the small cigars to the kids from school. And all the little girls with the bleached blonde curls clump up on the platform sounds. And they say, hey Ray, let's ride away downtown where we can
fragrance from ear to ear, and whispers. So follow me, trail along. My leather jacket's buttoned up, and my four-stroke song will pick you up when your last class ends. And you can tell all your friends. For the Pied Piper pulled you, the Mad Biker pulled you. I'll do what you want to. If you ride with me on a Friday, anything goes. So follow me. Oh, don't. My schoolgirl is floating in free flight. I'm a tenor in my skin-tight jeans. You can touch it if your hands are clean. The Pied Piper hold you. The Mad Biker hold you. I'll do what you want to. If you ride with me on a Friday, anything goes. So follow me, trail along. My leather jacket's buttoned up, and my four-stroke song will pick you up when your last class ends. And you can tell all your friends that a Pied Piper pulled you. The Mad Biker pulled you. I'll do what you want to. If you ride with me on a Friday, anything goes. The Pied Piper pulled you. The Mad Biker pulled you. I'll do what you want to. If you ride with me on a Friday, anything goes on a Friday, anything goes on a Friday, anything goes. Pied Piper, the Mad Biker. 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 Pied Piper, the Mad Biker.
So we're going to transition from the golden age to the 2000s and the return of Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull to a more acoustic, instrumental, less sort of really hard rock stuff.
Sure. In the 80s and 90s, Ian, for reasons known to him, did a lot of music that was more hard rock, a lot of albums and touring that included a lot of hard rock, including the one Grammy that Ian never won. Not that I'm a big fan of the Grammys, as Ari knows. But
Yeah, I was going to say. So it wasn't that he didn't achieve a lot of success and notoriety in the 80s and 90s. It was that, well, you've never really cared that much about that stuff anyway.
Right, but the song called Steel Monkey on the album Crest of It, Knave, 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 got him acclaim, got him a Grammy for hard rock in the mid-'80s. And we've decided that we're going to skip that and skip the 90s. Again, sorry to any of you Tull skulls who wish we wouldn't do that, but we're going to. And we're going to go back to the first return to a lot of acoustic sweetness, I call it, with a song from the album that he called Secret Language of Birds, incidentally, Funny enough, the acronym being SLOB, a secret language of birds. And this song is Ari's favorite. Now, Ari has pointed out, as we were preparing for the show, that Jethro Tull has never been his favorite, and that's fine. You know, you raise your kids as best you can, but whatever.
Sometimes mistakes happen.
Exactly. Anyway, this is Ari's favorite song from Jethro Tull. It's called Panama Freighter.
Yes, though, quick note before we play that. I'm going to have to play a PSA for you.
Oh, yeah.
And we aren't done with our show yet. In fact, we actually have quite a bit more to get to, especially the orchestral stuff that we're going to focus on. But we found out right before the show started that we have the ability to go over our allotted hour. And I know that some people who this show was advertised to were told you'd only have to give up 1 hour. So if you've been listening at all, that's fantastic. And if you choose not to continue listening, of course, thank you for just listening at all. But if you do choose to stick around with us, that'd be great. So after the PSA, we're going to keep going for a little while.
We'll be here till 7 o'clock tonight.
Oh, no,
Just kidding.
Yeah, not quite.
Monday. Get ready for the SGA presidential debate as Patrick Ronk and Ori Gooten face off in a showdown that will end in a smackdown. Broadcasted at 7:45 p.m. in the North Campus Dining Hall. Good luck keeping your meal down when you see the candidates eat each other alive.
Right, so that PSA obviously is a bit dated. I don't know when the next presidential debate for the SGA is, but they told me I have to play PSAs. I picked one at random. It counts. Moving on. We're going back to focusing on the, not orchestral, not yet, the more acoustic, sort of less hard rocky stuff. My favorite of Panama Freighter, my favorite song called Panama Freighter is what we're going to be listening to first. Then after that, we're going to talk about another album that he released that was sort of like a compilation and return at the same time, compilation of everything he'd done over his career and return to the more acoustic stuff called the Christmas album. And we'll listen to one song off of that called Jack Frost and the Hooded Crow. But first, Panama Freighter.
Closing on a shanty town, Panama freighter wearing rusty brown. Well, she sails tomorrow and she's homeward bound, head up on a lumpy sea, on a lumpy sea. I'm not the only lonely planet rider in this one-horse town. I'm thinking, and I won't overrate or patronize you. Different as chalk and cheese, as black hole winters and salad days. And I wouldn't like your mother much anyway, but it's not her I'm taking home with me. Not her I'm taking home with me. Don't intend to dress you in silver threads like some trophy in sublime seclusion. Won't try to educate or civilize you. cruising on a shanty town, Panama freighter wearing rusty brown. Well, she sails tomorrow and she's homeward bound, and you're bound to come home with me. Bound to come home with me. And you're bound to come home with me on the Panama freighter with me. Hoodie Crow.
This is WMUC FM College Park. Hello, folks, and thank you to tuning in right now, anyone who's just tuning in right now. My name is Len Rickman. This is an extended version of Tape Deck Time Machine, and I'm here in the studio with a very special guest.
That would be me, Ari's dad, Len. Thank you, Ari.
And today we are focusing on Jethro Tull, celebrating my dad's favorite band and their 50th anniversary, and the tour that Ian Anderson, the leader of Jethro Tull, is giving this year. So up to this point, we've covered a wide range of things, and we're now going to transition into an orchestral album that Ian Anderson did. He took a whole bunch of his greatest hits, and he brought in a full, I don't even know how many a full orchestra, the whole thing, strings, everything, and redid a lot of his songs in a classical bent with the orchestra behind him.
And just to point out, he did it in the studio and on stage. Ari might not remember when he was a little boy.
No, I do.
took him to an orchestral show, at Tanglewood in Massachusetts. And then my wife Kay and I saw this orchestral show at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. Shout out to Jennifer. She's listening. Colorado. Great show. And one of the things I've been babbling about over the years is how the similarity between Jethro Tull's electric rock and roll and Baroque classical music, including elements of classical type music on an electric guitar. I might be right, I might be wrong, but it seems like that to me. And recently in concert, even the famous Bach Toccata, which we're not going to play today, played on an electric guitar. So that element, I think, is real. And the next few songs are from the orchestral album, and it's also the first one we're going to play is a great example of, as Ari calls the show, Tape Deck Time Machine. Thank you. This is a time traveling song. It's a song from an album that Ian put out in 1969, but happens to be a remake of a song some fella named J.S. Bach put out, if you will, about 300 years ago. The version we're going to play came from 2003, so we go from 1969 to 2003 from a song a good 300 years ago. It's called Bourrée. And then we have other songs from the orchestral. Ian Anderson plays the orchestral Jethro Tull.
So, right, we're going to start with Bourrée. We're going to do then In the Grip of Stronger Stuff, and then Living in the Past to make a nice final homage to the theme of the show.
And at the end of Living in the Past, I know it's a bunch of minutes from now, but check out the amazing flute live.
So, starting with Bourrée.
Before we do that, I'll announce this song, which is a formal and serious piece of classical music. Or rather, it was 300 years ago when it was written by J.S. Bach. Little did Mr. Bach know that I would bugger about with this in a fierce and frenzied way for 35 years now, turning it into a piece of quite loathsome cocktail lounge jazz. And tonight, with the addition of the orchestra, we're going to make it even worse. It's downhill all the way to the intermission. This is a piece called Bourrée, and I hope you like it. Hope Mr. Bach likes it too.
Coming up, the orchestra will play the part of the second flute that was on the album.
In the original one, Ian Anderson had two flutes, or played the flute and then sort of overdubbed himself.
We have about 15 or 20 more minutes left. We went overboard, over time, etc., and I could be here for hours and hours, as you might be able to tell. I'm kind of into this stuff. But if you're still listening, friends and family, 15, 20 more minutes or so, and two more songs from the orchestral album, including that Living in the Past that finishes with that great flute, although that was pretty cool flute and grunting just there a moment ago. Thank you.
Right, and so now we're going to start with In the Grip of Stronger Stuff. Enjoy.
Oh.
to drink your water. You know I'd love to love you, and above you there's no other. Oh, we'll go walking out while others shout of war's disaster. Oh, we won't give in, let's go living in the past. Let's go living in the past. Oh no, no, we won't give in. Let's go living in the past.
So over the years, us tall skulls have noticed that Ian's voice has gone considerably downhill, while his flute playing has gone uphill. That was some great flute, I think, and I suppose you flautists out there would agree. And if not, well, text me someday and we'll have a debate. Since we've gone over time today, and we sure appreciate your patience and your ears, we have a bonus track or two to play before we will end the show with the song that Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull have ended their shows with for 40 years. That would be Locomotive Breath, but we're not quite getting to that. We're going to do a little bonus track now called Life's a Long Song, which has always been another one of my favorites, and this version is also from the orchestral Jethro Tull.
When you're falling awake and
as you take stock of the new day, and you hear your voice croak as you choke on what you need to say. Well, don't you fret, don't you fear, I will give you good cheer. Life's a long song, life's a long song, life's a long song, yeah. If you wait, then your blade I will fill. As the verses unfold and your soul suffers the long day, and the 12 o'clock gloom spans the room, you struggle on your way. Well, don't you sigh, don't you cry, lick the dust from your eye. Life's a long song, life's a long song, life's a long song, yeah. We will meet in the sweet light of dawn, as the Baker Street train spills your pain all over your new dress, and the symphony sounds underground put you under duress. Well, don't you squeal as the heel grinds you under the wheels. Life's a long song, life's a long song, life's a long song, yeah. But the tune ends too soon for a song. The tune ends too soon for a song.
A sweet little tune's been known to bring a tear to my eye over the years. Who among us hasn't been moved to tears by music? Raise your hands. Oh, wait, we can't see you. Raise your hands anyway. So we're almost done here, as we've been saying. And I wanted to point out one other thing about Ian's banter, and then we'll play a song. Early in the days of touring, when the keyboardist had a lot of different adjustments to make knobs and switches and all that stuff, you could see him busily, frantically in the background setting up the next song, while Ian would do something to fill the time. He would talk to the audience, tell all kinds of stories about songs and about things, some of them humorous, some of them with some dirty words, which we will not repeat today. And it just became part of his whole act. So even when electronic sequencers and all that stuff came out and it was no longer necessary to make the adjustments, Ian continued the banter. And that's what you heard some of before Bourrée with Downhill to the Intermission and all that kind of stuff. It's just a nice little part of the show where Ian is relating to the audience, saying things that sometimes are true and sometimes are just whatever it comes off the top of his head. So now we're going to play a song that my wife requested, as we're almost finished here, called Raft of Penguins, from the second album Ian put out in his return to acoustic days. First was Secret Language of Birds, as we said, then it was a Rupee's Dance, and this is from Rupee's Dance.
Of penguins on a frozen sea, expectant faces look down on me. Shuffle uneasy, the whistler plays. Counting 11, they begin to pray. Tenuous but clinging, the missing link joins us closer than we might think. Some heart remembered hoarse jungle drum, a naked heartbeat, trill and hum. This world's no stage for the faint at heart. Each symphony a sum of parts. Each overture a sweet foreplay. Let's crash and burn some other day. Bonded in terror, a suspicion deep, tentative tiptoe or giant leap. Call down the angels to guide them in. A raft of penguins take to the wing. A raft of penguins on a frozen sea. Expectant faces look down on me. Shuffle uneasy, the whistler plays. Counting 11, they begin to pray.
So thanks everyone who listened in. This has been Tape Deck Time Machine, an extended episode with a special guest. And we're going to close out the show, as we may have mentioned before, with Locomotive Breath, which is the song that Ian Anderson has been ending his concerts with for the last 40 years. But before we do that, Dad, is there anything, I think you wanted to say something about that last song?
Just to point out that many of Ian's songs have those false endings where you think the song's over and then he adds another little element. Nice touch, great songwriting, we call it. And he's got a lot of those kind of jumps and bridges, including those false closes. And this, as Ari mentioned, this Locomotive Breath thing that he's been ending shows with for 40 years, that includes the rock and roll version we're about to play, which originally came from the album Aqualung, which we started with, but also acoustic versions and orchestral versions, all kinds of different arrangements of Locomotive Breath. But now we're going to end the show with the original version of Locomotive Breath.
And I think you mentioned this in the beginning of the show, but I want to reiterate that it's the 50th anniversary of Jethro Tull's beginning, and Correct. Ian Anderson is 70 years old.
Turned 70 last August. Don't know the day, but he turned 70, yes.
And he is celebrating by going on tour of around 70 concerts this year.
2018, approximately 70 shows in a dozen different countries. My wife and friends and I are seeing the show at Wolf Trap in September. You haven't gotten your tickets yet, and that's my favorite venue and my favorite band, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
So, Locomotive Breath, finishing out the show. Thanks for listening, and tune back in next week for more Tape Deck Time Machine.
Please do.
shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death. Oh, it feels a piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Oh, Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it just slowed down. Oh, it sees his children jumping off stations one by one. His woman and his best friend in bed and having fun. Oh, it's crawling down the corridor on his hands and knees. Oh, Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it just slowed down. Yeah. The silence howling catches angels as they fall, and the all-time winner has got him by the balls. Oh, he picks up Gideon's Bible, open at page 1. I thank God he stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it just slowed down. 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 No, it just slowed down.
Okay, we're wrapping up here. I want to thank my son Ari for inviting me to be here today. I had a lot of fun. I think we did a good job together, but mostly thanks to him because he really knows what he's doing here in the studio. I'm an old radio frustrated DJ myself from long ago. Some of you may know, but Ari did a great job, and I appreciate being here. One last note about Jethro Tull. To me, and this is going to sound weird, but at the end of the show, who cares? To me, Jethro Tull music, what we've been hearing, the acoustic, the rock and roll, the back and forth between those, is a little bit like being at the beach next to the ocean, where the ocean can be powerful and foreboding and yet gentle and accommodating and accessible. You can go in there, and the ocean can be scary, and on one day it can be rough and pounding, and on the next day it can be gentle and sweet. To me, that's been something I approach audio-wise Jethro Tull's music over all these years. So again, thank you to Ari, thank you to the listeners, thank you to WMUC, and I had a great time. Hope to see you again sometime on the radio. And one more thing, as people know, I used to like to say a lot when I was a swim team announcer, one reason I got to do this gig is because I have a beautiful face for radio.
Thanks, Dad. And formally, I would like to thank you for being the co-host today, and thank you for blessing the airwaves with your knowledge and deep, deep passion for Jethro Tull. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to re-examine Jethro Tull in a more critical, mature lens, because as we mentioned, it wasn't my super favorite thing listening to in car rides growing up. But now that I'm growing up, grown, almost there.
He's getting there.
Yeah, it's this show was a lot of fun. So thanks for being here, and thank you to everyone for listening. Hope to see you guys next week.
Peace.
And we're going to leave the studio now. We're going to leave the studio with Thick as a Brick, the full 40-minute long song playing. If you want to stick around for that, you're more than welcome to. Enjoy.
Really don't mind if you sit this one out. My words but a whisper, your deafness a shout. I may make you feel, but I can't make you think. Your sperm's in the gutter, your love's in the sink. So you ride yourselves over the fields, and you make all your animal deals, and your wise men don't know how it feels to be thick as a brick. And the sandcastle virtues are all swept away in the tidal destruction, the moral malaise. The elastic retreat rings the close of play as the last wave uncovers the newfangled way. But your new shoes are worn at the heels, and your suntan's rapidly peels, and your wise men don't know how it feels to be thick as a brick. And the love that I feel is so far away. I'm a bad dream that I just had today. And you shake your head, you said it's a shame. Spin me back down the years and the days of my youth. Draw the lace and black curtains and shut out the whole truth. Spin me down the long ages, let them sing the song. plays on the infantry, returning from the sea. The doer and the thinker, no allowance for the other, as the failing light illuminates the mercenaries' creed. The home fire burning, the kettle almost boiling, but the master of the house is far away. The forest is standing, their warm breath clouding in the sharp and frosty morning of the day. And the poet lifts his pen while the soldier sheathes his sword. And the youngest of the family is moving with authority, building castles by the sea. He dares the tardy time to watch them all aside. The cattle quietly grazing at the grass down by the river, where the swelling mountain water moves onward to the sea. The builder of the castles renews the age-old purpose and contemplates the milking girl whose offer is his need. The young men of the household have all gone into service and are not to be expected for a year. The innocent young master, God's moving ever faster, has formed a plan to curl your toes and fun as you smile at everyone. You meet the stares, you're unaware that your doings aren't done. And you laugh most ruthlessly as you tell us one of the tea. But how are we supposed to see